Hello, my name is Raina Smith, and today I will be discussing the topic of slum tourism, also known as pourism. Tourism is a constantly evolving industry, and in the modern world, there are many bizarre forms of tourism. They include disaster tourism, adoption tourism, grave tourism, and many others. One of the most popular and fastest growing niches in tourism is slum tourism. Slum tourism is when tourists and their guides go into poverty-stricken areas, also known as slums, to observe the conditions experienced by the area's residents. This photo shows a tour group walking the streets of Rio. As the place most often cited as the spark that lit the fire of slum tourism, Rio is well known for its favela tours. Favela is the Brazilian term for a slum, and favela tours in Rio quickly grew in both popularity and variety. This photo shows one of many tour groups in Rio posing with some of the residents for a large group photo. Other countries took note, and many began to mimic the slum tours of Brazil. These tours charge tourists for a tour of the slum and allow them to take pictures. In Rio, there are daily excursions managed by two main tour groups, Jeep Tour and Favela Tour, that provide a glimpse into Rosina, the largest of Rio's favelas. The tours had 10 tourists in a Jeep, most of whom knew almost nothing about the favelas. They go through narrow passages, see graffiti, and most of all, observe other people's lives. While the tour guides take care to not point it out, tourists can often see illegal activities happening while in the favelas. One tour group had only European guides who weren't natives of the land and only knew what anyone could learn about the favelas. The same tour group shows no signs of giving back to the community, something most advocates of slum tourism cite as one of its benefits. The tours allow tourists to take photos, but they don't interact with the residents. That is why I believe that slum tourism without establishing dialogue is demeaning and exploitative of natives. First, slum tourism is unethical. With slum tourism, poverty becomes entertainment. It allows richer people to feel better about their station in life. It affirms their belief in themselves and lets them look down on the people living in poverty. Slum tourism is voyeurism. Most people view poverty, feel better about themselves, go home, and never think about it again. It is intrusive to bring tours through these people's daily lives without their permission, even if the tourists have good intentions. Most of them could never understand the level of poverty found in these slums. In this photo, even the tour guide is participating by taking photos of the junk pile around him. The poverty entertains the tourists, and nothing is done to help the residents. How would you feel if your bad circumstances were turned into entertainment? If everyone was surrounding you and looking on while you struggled? Advocates of slum tourism argue that slum voluntourism is helpful. While it is certainly better than the voyeuristic tendencies of basic slum tourism can also create its own problems. The residents can be offended by the tourists when they don't understand their culture. This photo shows a group of men posing for a picture during their volunteer work. This act of taking a photo when you're supposed to be there to help the residents could make them think that they aren't really there for good reasons. It may seem like they're only there to make themselves look good for helping the poor. The photo on this slide shows people walking down streets lined with garbage and graffiti. Slum tourism can also be dangerous. There have been cases of fatal shootings of tourists during slum tours. In Rio, there was an incident where rival gangs had been fighting for months. The federal government sent army troops into the area, and there was already a police presence. There was a slum tour happening, and the tourists and their guide were in a jeep when the driver was ordered to stop. But He thought it was a shootout, so he accelerated, attempting to escape. The police opened fire and fatally shot a Spanish woman. The family of the woman, who was also on the tour, told the investigators that they received no warning of the risks associated with the tour. If the companies aren't being upfront and honest, isn't that a sign that tourists shouldn't participate in these tours? People also argue that the income brought in from the tours outweighs the negative feelings that residents may experience. They also bring up the point that you can't just ignore poverty. Obviously, ignoring poverty isn't a viable option, but slum tourism doesn't really help awareness. People observe poverty and go home and forget about it. In this photo, a woman is taking a selfie with some children from the slum. Nothing is done here to actually help the residents or educate the tourists. If she really wanted to help, she could donate money to reputable charity organizations or do something besides smiling for a selfie. When it comes to income, the amount of money that actually goes back into the community can be relatively insignificant. Typically, most of the profit stays within the companies. While some of the tourism companies do genuinely want to make a difference, it takes a while to turn a profit if you're just getting started. Development programs are more beneficial to the people of the slums. This photo shows a woman sitting up against a wall with bowls by her feet and trash beside her. It doesn't really look like slum tourism has done this woman much good. In conclusion, slum tourism does not benefit residents. It is demeaning and it makes them feel like they lose their dignity by being turned into entertainment. In these photos, you can see tourists smiling for a selfie with residents in the background. In the right one, there are a few smiling natives, but not many. And in the left one, it is clear that the child is not a fan of the tourists encroaching on her home. As Kennedy O'Deed, a former resident of a slum, puts it, slum tourism is a one-way street. They get photos, and we lose a piece of our dignity. If a member of the most affected group criticizes slum tourism, shouldn't we listen to them?